Hello, it's Kieran at the beginning of the episode with some announcements. In case you don't know, this episode is a crossover episode with us and the beautiful boys over at Pod Damn America, which, if you don't know Pod Damn America, it's a great podcast. I've been a patron of theirs for a while now. No regrets. Funny boys. And we talk about the German elections. So if you're coming to Corner Späti for the first time from Pod Damn America's feed, you've already heard this episode. Go check our back catalog. We have a good start page at operationglad.io/start. operationglad.io/start. Go there, you can see what episodes are. Maybe take your fancy. If you are a regular Corner Späti listener, keep in mind that this episode might be a bit rudimentary in terms of German politics because we were explaining a lot of stuff to the Pod Damn America crew and their audience about how German politics works. You might know some of that stuff already. If not, that's cool. You can listen to the episode. It's still a fun time. You should listen anyway. I have one other announcement that I didn't get to in this episode, which is we will be doing a Corner Späti live show on October 25th as a part of the Podcast Festival Berlin in Comedy Cafe Berlin, 10 p.m. On a Monday night, which should be a lot of fun. Tickets are €4. You can book them online on the Comedy Cafe Berlin website. We will be doing an episode with some comedy favorite recurring guests, including Josie Parkinson, Matthew, and Ian. Great guests that we've had on before for what is going to be a very weird chaos episode, I am sure. If you're a patron of ours, hit us up, send us a message. We might be able to sort something out in terms of ticket price. And without further ado, please enjoy the Pod Damn America Corner Späti crossover episode. Cheers.
Okay, here's how I'm choosing to start the show. Everyone's going to hate this. Unterglieben, Glauden, Gluden from the Offspring song.
Yeah.
That's it. Episode over.
We're all leaving at a protest.
I'm quitting the show.
That's from a pretty fly for a white guy.
I'm sure I didn't even say that right. Which
Is that meant to be?
Offspring
Was
song
that
is
meant to be
from?
German?
No,
I think it was supposed to, yeah.
Oh.
it's a
Yeah.
complete
Was he
non sequitur.
German
There's
in
nothing
it?
else to do with
Like,
it.
I don't know.
It's,
Like,
it's
it's fake
important
German.
his character that the white guy
No, it
is
is.
German.
Yeah. You've been glad and gluten. Dun, 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 dun. Give it to me, baby.
I don't think that was from Pretty Fly for a White. Wait, maybe it
Yeah,
was.
no, it is.
It is,
Oh, I never got that.
No, that's it. That's it.
Let
Just do the
Anders
intro.
finish the song.
Yiddish.
Please go
I
ahead.
genuinely
Literally
thought it was
say
Yiddish.
Pretty
I don't
fly
know
for
why.
a white guy.
No, please sing it, Anders.
Uno, dos, tres, cuatro, cinco, cinco, seis.
Welcome to the show.
Hello, everyone.
There's too many languages in this song.
Yeah, the song is clearly too intelligent for most people. You have to be a real worldly renaissance. You have to be like a Pete Buttigieg, that thing where he speaks 10 languages and there's a name for it. What is that again?
Polyglot.
Polyglot.
Polythought, am I right? Oh.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the show. We're talking about Germany today, are we? Hello, I'm Jake Flores. Alex Patak is here.
Hey, everybody, it's a crossover episode.
Oh, it is a crossover episode. Anders Lee is here.
Anders Lee Hauch, which
Yes.
There you go.
is here in German is
More of this.
Hauch. How do you say it? H-I-E-R.
Here.
It's just here. Fuck. God damn it. That's what we've been going over. We've been trying to say, I've been asking like 5 times before we started, how do you say this in German? And it's just this. It's just the same
it's
exact word.
Remarkably similar language.
And today, this is depending on what feed you're listening to, it's a podcast mashup. We're like simulcasting. Is that what's going on with our friends at, I'm not going to be able to pronounce it correctly,
Go for it.
Corner Späti?
Yeah, that's actually pretty close. Yeah, Corner
Really?
Späti. Yeah. Hey. It's your weekly Corner Späti. It's me, Kieran. I'm joined by Nick.
Hey.
And Rob.
Sure.
And you've heard the Pod Damn America boys over there being wonderful and American.
What's that?
And We're here to teach them other German words that are exactly the same as their English counterparts. The German for book is Buch.
Is there, okay, what is the American word for Späti? Is that bar? What the hell does your name of the podcast mean?
What the hell is a Späti?
Is that a magic word? Does it mean like corner store?
Yeah, it'd be like a corner store.
It's very Berlin word, and it's also, I think the cool thing about it is illegal because there are strict like what hours can shops be open at in German law, and none of them obey those laws.
Right.
So they're cool.
Cool.
And in the American mind, when things are illegal in Germany, the SS shows up and shuts the store down.
So when
the police do shut down a lot of Spätis.
Yeah,
it's actually a thing that happens.
But they're the like fun police.
But when they do it, you have like a little attic space that people can go up and drink in, right? You're hiding from them.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was like a speakeasy sort of what was going on up there.
You have to be really quiet with your drink. That's part of the rules.
Yeah, it was like one of those raves where you put on headphones. Silent rave was happening maybe up there.
Those are actually still fairly loud. Have you ever been into one of those without the headphones on? It's still a lot of people scuffing their sneakers on the floor.
Right, because they don't know how loud they're being when they along to the music.
Just farting and stuff.
Mouth breathing.
Now I want to see like Anne Frank teens only. Like if it was just a party house.
Right. Many of us want to.
Yeah.
It's a kind of the last taboo in many ways. But we're here today to discuss the last taboo. Elections. How did they work?
Yeah, that is a big question.
The last taboo in Germany is leaving NATO. How about that? Little segue there.
Oh, there
And
you go.
They have been warning that these electoral results are going to lead to the dissolution of, maybe not the dissolution of NATO, but at least Germany leaving NATO because the left has been getting some attention. That's the name of the party, is just the left. Die Linke.
Die Linke, yeah.
And
why do you do a Scottish accent? That's what I want to know.
Die Linke.
There you go.
The links, yes, like the golf course, which was invented in Scotland. Very good. But there was an election, and the results are still coming in, not of the voting, but of the dating game that happens after elections in countries with parliamentary systems, because you got to form the coalition government. And mainstream press was really freaking out about RRG, right? Red, green, which is going to be the Social Democrats, Die Linke, and the Greens, who are going to form a left-wing government. They're going to do all kinds of crazy stuff, but it doesn't look like that is going to happen. Is that correct?
Yeah, it probably was never likely, to be perfectly honest, but like that doesn't stop a good old conservative media from doing big old red scare.
Yeah, I think
Just
the thing about
Red, green scare.
Red, green
yeah,
scare.
exactly.
Quick aside, I just have to know this before we move forward. Do other people call it the dating game, or is this just an Andersism?
Oh, this is an Andersism. I'm just
Okay,
rolling
I just
with
had
it,
to
though,
know
yeah.
up top. Okay, good.
I've never been to America. I have, but it was a long time ago. I don't know what you people say.
I feel that they should incorporate that, though, because of the two parties that are going into coalition talks right now. Very much are doing the will they, won't they, kind of thing. But we'll get to that in a bit.
We will.
The thing about like the red, green, I think that was just the I don't know, kind of the interesting thing is that Berlin has on a state level.
Yeah.
For those who don't know, Berlin is a city state in Germany. There's three of them. Hamburg, Bremen, and Berlin.
Baby.
And the possibility of a red, green, you could always kind of see was just like pushed to the wayside always because of how Berlin was always reported about. Whenever any like type of thing that happened that conservative media, which is the general, way that media is in Germany, didn't like, they would just blame it on the red, green coalition. And I think that started like last election. Like it's the entire time that I lived here has been like, oh, Berlin with their crazy left-wing government. You kind of saw it like bubbling up with that. And then there was when the election with the possibility of like, because last election, Die Linke was polling at, Die Linke had about 10% of votes, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
And then the possibility of if Die Linke did as well as they did last election, that red, green would be a possible coalition. You saw then kind of this onslaught of one, that it's communism, even though like Die Linke is like a social democratic party compared to like most other European left-wing parties. And two, that it was like the other like the NATO stuff, and you saw like this continuous thing of that, and that then Berlin's a failure because of red green, and Die Linke didn't even like come through. They got into the parliament based on a technicality,
Right?
Yeah. So the to back up a bit. Okay, so I get a lot of your audience and probably the hosts here would understand the rest of Germany's attitude towards Berlin is basically the rest of America's attitude towards New York.
I understand immediately.
Oh,
I would say even more like San Francisco or something.
Yeah.
Sure.
Like, in terms of
okay. Imagine
debauchery.
Yeah, imagine if New York had like a decently like left wing government is probably how it, because it's still, you still get also like a lot of the Germans thinking that like, oh, the city's filthy, there's crime everywhere, you will just be shot by someone if you come here. That
There's
kind of
plenty
stuff
of
happens.
American Facebook dads that think that communism is happening in New York.
Sure.
Right.
Sure.
Several people think New York City has been burned to the ground already, but that somehow we're still living here.
On Fox News, they tell everyone's parents that it's just the Warriors is happening here, and then you go outside and it's like,
I mean,
cute.
it is
absolutely.
kind of starting to happen, but that's because of climate change and like too
Right.
much capitalism.
Yeah. Well, that was, I mean, like there's a really funny thing that's kind of related to this of exactly that. There's like a boomer-ish kind of guy that exists in Germany, and they just like will respond on everything that they don't like that's happening in Berlin as GDR or like Stasi. And so there was actually an incident of that they miscounted votes in two districts of Berlin, of Reinickendorf and of Pankow, on the local elections. Actually, no, in every single thing.
Yeah.
And when it comes down to then like the seats that are being distributed on like the local parliaments, it's been like kind of fucked up that like the CDU guy won by like 40 votes or something.
And that's
like
the
that.
Christian Democrats, moderate.
That is the right-wing party.
No, right wing.
they're right wing. Okay.
Right way.
Yeah, so they voted, these two districts voted for right-wing parties, both voting, overwhelmingly for the Christian Democrats, and they both also voted against the expropriation bill that was on, or the expropriation mandate that was on the ballot. But apparently this is voter fraud. Apparently this is, the GDR. This is communism.
East Germany is back.
Yeah, things that voted for horribly conservative measures. And one of the people who got in is an open neo-Nazi. That's apparently communism.
He came out. As a
Literally,
neo-Nazi.
he was like, there was a thing, just like a dump on Twitter of like, check out this dude who's like now the head of like, like Mariendorf, which is like an area of Berlin. And he had like, his Facebook picture is just like his dopey ass, and then it says like Vaterland, like
Oh, God.
the fatherland across it with like the black, red, and white flag, which is like
Not
it's
okay to
yeah.
fly anymore.
Yeah. So instead of you flying the swastika, they fly this flag. They fly the Imperial German
The one
flag.
that came just before.
Interesting.
And he's in the CDU, not in the AFD, which is the further right,
Yeah.
Is it kind of a Golden Dawn situation where he's like slapping people in public?
No. That is some, Southern European stuff that the Germans would never do.
No,
Right.
of course not.
There's
Not-
something in
they
the
would-
olive oil.
They wouldn't steep to be a sleazy Sudlander.
Yeah, exactly.
The thing to put into context with all of this is that like we kind of said, Die Linke just got in on a technicality. Germany has a threshold. You need 5% of the public vote to even get into parliament,
Or you to win 3 direct candidates, which
or
Die Linke
win
got.
3 direct candidates, which they did. They actually only got 4.9% of the public vote.
Yeah,
So
edging it in.
if it wasn't for those 3 direct candidates, they wouldn't be in the parliament.
Thank God for them.
And just to emphasize the like precariousness of the situation, one of the direct candidates was Gregor Gysi, one of the most famous Die Linke members, but like he's not getting any younger. So like it's probably not going to be someone who will get a direct mandate.
Is he your Bernie?
Once he's not running.
He's like a Bernie
honestly,
precursor.
Maybe.
Okay.
He's, we've hashed this out. He was like a student reformer in East Germany in like '89.
Yeah.
I think for
yeah, so,
like the American listener, we need to take even another step back and talk about like what politics is like in Germany in general. Because the concept most people have here, whenever we get denied like basic healthcare or something like that, is like, well, we're not living in Germany. It's not a social democrat paradise. But it sounds like you guys have been run by a coalition under the Christian Democrats for around 10 years, which is a Donnie Darko ass name. And
yeah, don't look at the origins of Christian democracy. We're just saying.
Well, you guys know them. The CIA made them. Okay, God. Okay, yeah. Step back a little further. So there's basically 6 parties in Germany that count, but really there's only like 2. And yeah, you have the Christian Democrats, which is Merkel. Everyone knows Merkel. People think Merkel
from
is
the birds.
Yeah, from the birds
From the
image.
Bird woman.
She holds birds. She screams. She's in charge.
Yeah.
Merkel. Sorry, that just popped into my head.
Oh God,
Continue. I can't do her voice. I was going to do "Did I do that?" in her voice.
How did the AFD not run with that during the refugee crisis?
Yeah.
Oh my God,
That would have been such a fucking. I don't think they got that show here.
no, they
The answer is they didn't hire me, baby.
Habe ich das getan?
I mean, yeah,
That's
okay.
like that's
That
fair
leads us
point,
into, I guess, the AFD, which is your far right party, which is relatively new. What, like 2013?
2013.
And you guys
yeah.
can't say this because of the libel laws in Germany and in Europe, but we might say in America that they are basically the modern continuation of the old Nazi party.
Oh no! That's
quite?
like giving them too much credit. No, because the AFD, the AFD is one of the most interesting parties in Europe because they started out as a political party like
Libertarian-ish?
post-Euro crisis that was like a
Yeah.
libertarian party that then just like didn't have any
Let's
other.
take a quick moment and ring the bell for yet another libertarian party that turned to a far right party.
Fascinating how that happened.
What is
could
this
that
cheap?
happen?
So they were like a one policy party of just like getting out of the Eurozone
Yeah.
and like reverting back to the Deutschmark and having like hyper Austrian economic policies. They
God.
still have these at their core. And then during the so-called refugee crisis, they doubled down on the racism. And people who were like, I think the thing that we have to like kind of also emphasize for listeners who are not Corner Späti listeners is that the AFD, while yes, they are what you could maybe put into a category as like a neo-fascist party. You'd be right, I would say. The thing is, though, is that the largest amount of their like membership, especially in like their leadership, are just old members of the CDU that they were disgruntled with Merkel. They are the highest. They're the party with the highest amount of PhDs of people who are in parliament. They, I think, have like, so it is this like thing of like, oh, they're just this like
There's an
party of, like,
intellectual foundation.
yeah. There is a massive intellectual foundation, and then it's not just a party of just like knuckle dragging weirdos in the East. Given, yes, they have a big following in the East because the CDU and the SPD kind of like ditched the East, and you only have like Die Linke and the AFD who like kind of try to view things from a somewhat materialist base in one way or another, where the AFD just like sprinkles a lot more racism in it than like Die Linke has a lot of racism in its Eastern parties. Like, don't get me wrong, but the AFD was very explicit, like during the refugee crisis, of like that, you know, this is going to destroy Western Europe, this and that and that. So they you know, in 2017 during the last elections, they became the third largest party, sorry, in German parliament. So yeah,
I mean, it's worth pointing out that the reason the AFD is made up of former CDU members is because the logic of the CDU since the beginning of West Germany is there cannot be another party to the right of us. We are big tent right wing.
Yeah.
So there are still members of the CDU which we legally cannot say are Nazis, but
they help out Nazis, though.
Sure, yeah, absolutely.
And so CDU has been in power for a very long time. People were worried that AFD was going to build on their 2017 result. Looks like they haven't done that, but it also looks like Die Linke has not really done that either. So SPD, the Social Democrats, the people who ordered the death of Rosa Luxemburg, basically, are the winning
same people.
Yes.
They're very old.
Yeah.
They're the
They
most.
commemorate it every single year too. They don't want the Germans to forget that they've done that. If you stray too far left, they will throw you into a canal after killing you with people who end up becoming Nazis 10 years later.
There's a statue of a lady cowering that they all gather around.
But they they're the winningest party, but they don't have an outright majority on their own.
Yeah.
Who does it look
Germany
like?
can't have outright majorities.
Okay.
It just is into it can't. There's too many factors at play that would never really allow. I think the closest that we saw was the late 90s, early 2000s with Gerhard Schröder's party. But you don't and they had to make a coalition with the Greens back then. But I guess we can get to that in some other time maybe.
Yeah. But the SPD.
But in the German media, there was as Kieran mentioned, there's 6 parties, but for a while it was a 3-party system, and then they almost announced now it's a 4-party or a 5-party, and now we're up to 6 parties in parliament, or for the past 2 elections. And I guess that does reflect some kind of maybe fracturing of certainly not the political consensus, but maybe of organization.
The CDU, for example, had about 20% of the vote or whatever, and that's
24%.
How much?
24.
Is it the lowest in,
and that's
in post-World War II history?
That's the lowest in history. Yeah, absolutely. But that's still nothing to snuff at in a multi-party democracy.
Yeah.
It's just that the trend is pretty clear. The 2 major parties, SPD and CDU, are both kind of historically on the downward trend.
Well, the SPD did very well though in the last election. We'll talk about that with the coalition building.
Overall graph,
the 2 other parties that we haven't talked about are the ones that then now are probably going to be getting the most focus of the episode, is the FDP, which are while the AFD are the ultra right wing libertarians, the FDP are more classically liberal, market first kind of socially liberal and also economically liberal. They're nerds. I don't know any other way to describe it.
Kids who brought a briefcase to school is pretty much the only way.
I had one of those in my high school, and now he listens to the show. Shout out to Peter Aldrich.
Nice. You can be saved. I mean, pod save is not necessarily even right, because they don't even necessarily bother with social progressive stuff, other than your typical libertarian things of weed should be legal and I don't care about gay marriage.
Mm-hmm.
They are very much economics first, and through that they're also incredibly politically cruel. They're just if the market says you failed, there is absolutely zero sympathy for that.
The FDP though changed. That used to not be the FDP maybe 10 years ago. The thing was that the FDP of kind of the beginning of the 2000s and whatnot was much more focused on the socially liberal stuff, and they kind of underwrote the basics of the so-called German social market system as a guaranteed fact of Germany. Is it we have things that then are these not privatized entities that kind of provide the backbone towards German society, but we want to have a little bit more capitalism than the other parties. And so the FDP's transition of the last last 2 elections at least have become much more market first in their attitude towards things. And they also, where this is the most depressing fucking fact, is that they were the most popular party amongst youth voters
under 29.
It sucks.
It sucks so much. And you can we've a friend of the show, Michelle, has been sending us some videos and stuff and been doing a deep dive into why this is. And the answer is famous German Twitch streamers who became rich by selling Pokemon cards.
Wow.
Or you need to vote for FDP. It's crypto bros shit. It's 100%.
Yeah, and they're headed by probably my favorite person in German politics, who is I don't know if I need to mention him on this or not, but
you do for this party, because this party is only this one guy.
So the entire identity of this party has been centered around this guy Christian Lindner, or Christian Lindner, if you want me to anglicize it a little bit.
Christian Linder.
Christian Lindner. And he's kind of funny because he's I hate cult of personalities. By the way, my party is only me.
It was a fun game during the election of Spot the Lindner.
Yeah.
Just
he had 7 different
with
posters of himself up in Berlin.
He thinks
looks
he's
like a
so
little
fucking
boy.
handsome. He
does
is a little boy. He's 100% a little boy. He had one billboard that I did a Photoshop of, but Nick here correctly pointed out that it's basically the final verse of Stan. He did make this whole thing of him writing at a desk and with a huge paragraph of text over it, and might as well have been like, "Dear Mister, I'm too good to call or write my fans." Yeah.
It was me.
Damn.
Which is also 100% true of what happens to FDP voters when their startups fail. They will drive themselves and their girlfriend off a bridge in a car, like doing a recording of themselves complaining to Christian Lindner and then forgetting to send it out afterwards.
YouTube Live.
I think I think one thing too to also Annette, like that's very interesting about the FDP or the Free Democrats, if you will, is that they're the only party that did not declare a candidate for chancellor. Christian Lindner is so full of himself that he knew that he would have been as the head of the party that he didn't even have to like make the declaration. And it was just assumed by everyone that he was their chancellor candidate, but they never announced. They never held a vote. They never did anything. Christian Lindner won his seat back for the head of his party, which is not the same as the chancellor candidate sometimes. And he won his vote by I think like 94%. And it just never like, put himself up for candidacy for his own party. No one ran against him either.
Who would?
No,
there's no one else. It's just him in suits.
I have a Google search up of him right now. It seems like, are they like trying to market it for you to date him? He's very,
very much that. Yes,
very handsome in all of these, kind of tightening a tie and giving you a sassy look.
So did he want someone else to nominate him for chancellor candidate and no one?
No. It was never brought up because Christian Linder's game is different. He is on a different wavelength. Christian Lindner doesn't give two shits about becoming Bundeskanzler. He will never get it.
What is Bundeskanzler?
Oh, the federal chancellor. What Angela Merkel.
Okay. Got it.
Yeah, so Christian Linder's endgame is the German finance ministry. And last election, actually, there was a possibility of the FDP, the Greens, and the CDU making a coalition called the Jamaica Coalition in Germany. And Christian Lindner broke off the discussions because the CDU, who was a much stronger party back then, and the FDP, I think, got like 6 or 7%. They were much weaker than they were now. Lindner demanded the finance ministry was pretty much just like laughed out.
It's the most powerful position in Germany, controlling the money. Absolutely. Yeah,
and so there was even a sense that now who's supposed to be the current head of the SPD after Olaf Scholz, who was their candidate for the chancellor, said in a press conference actually the other day, he's like, some people went to these negotiations last year with bad intentions and were making these like sketchy deals on balconies, which Lindner was meeting with members of the parties on balconies. And he's like, we're not going to have any of that.
Little Britney Spears, Colin Farrell action there.
Exactly. So if you're going to come into, coming into coalition talks, the SPD wants to come in on what they think are the grounds that they're the party leading it. But the FDP, very much Lindner specifically, has a game plan in mind, which is why I personally don't think that we're going to end up with the traffic light coalition of the SPD, the FDP, and the last party that we have not talked about yet, the Greens. Who,
and to be clear, just to explain these coalitions, you said Jamaica Coalition. That's not called that because of the Rasta vibes within the coalition.
It's such fucked vibes.
Germany has all their parties have a color. And it's what, green, black, and yellow, and that's the Jamaican flag, and that's why it's called that. And traffic light.
They're gonna make bobsledding a big part of their party.
When the colors of a coalition like happen to be a flag in like a warm country, like it's like hitting the lottery, like on the slot machine. Like lights start going off, money starts popping out. They start playing Bob Marley. The Germans get really excited about that.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. A member of the CDU will tell you about the one time he smoked weed, but he didn't inhale.
A huge part of German politics from like the year 1800 onwards is, fuck, we were so late to the colonization game. Fuck. Where can we go? What can we take?
There's no mines left.
So that's determined politics for a very long time.
Yeah. And what was the other coalition I said that I have to clarify? Traffic light coalition is you have red, you have green, red, and yellow.
Yeah.
So it is the Greens, the SPD, and the FDP.
Yeah.
Okay, and so for the last party we haven't get to, a lot of our listeners, and myself included, a lot of the votes we have cast as Americans have been for our Green Party, And the logical assumption is that Germany must have a Jill Stein, they must have a Ralph Nader.
They must have a Jill Stein, someone
Right.
who should clearly be in charge.
No.
Stein's a German last name.
Yeah.
It means stone.
Yil Stein.
Yilstein. It sounds like some
Jill
Freudian.
Wolfenstein.
It's an appropriate name for her because she loves stones.
Right. The Freudian condition of Yilstein, which is you're in a Sisyphean battle for power that you'll never complete. But
Against electoral
so
system
interesting.
rigged against third parties.
right. But the German Greens are a bit different. Is that fair to say?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, well, you mentioned pod save earlier.
Uh-huh.
That's probably what the German Greens are like. Is the
Really?
quickest? Yeah, like
Our pod save people hate
Right.
the Greens.
yeah.
It's interesting.
No, it's very kind of like your American liberal Democrats is the probably quickest way to doing it. There's caveats, but
Here's the quickest way of summarizing
Alright.
the Greens. The head of the Green Party met with John Kerry personally before the elections because they were the party that was being tapped by the United States to succeed the CDU. All right, that's it. It is. They are activism. Like they have their activist roots. They are, they have a long-ish history of, from the 68 movement of people then coming out of that with relatively like left-wing positions on things, particularly around the environment. Into the fall of the wall and into the 2000s, slowly stripping themselves of that, becoming more neoliberal, to now the point of that then the Greens are a vibe more than anything, I would say, as we've mentioned multiple times on Corner Späti, is that you are voting for the fact of feeling good about your voting for the environmental party, but they are like in Baden-Württemberg, one of the states in the southwest of Germany, they're in a coalition with the CDU.
yeah.
And in Germany, in Berlin, they're in a coalition, like I said earlier, with the SPD and the left. So they have they are chaotic. They will do. They actually organize themselves as a party at the beginning of the election. They actually had pretty good discipline with this, where a lot of the head members just abstained from votes because they didn't want to show what they're we're going to be doing. If they won, if they got enough votes coming into September or the end of September, and also before their party manifesto got released, they just did not they were extremely vague about everything, and their party manifesto at the end of the day was also super vague because their goal was getting into a coalition no matter what. And I think that this is going to end up becoming the sense of that then my prediction is that if the Greens end up in a coalition with the CDU, a lot of the people who voted for them this election are going to dip out of the party because their party membership actually didn't increase too much. It was simply votes of them. People were voting for them because they wanted to see a different party, and the Greens offered a vibe. They did really well in the European parliamentary elections the year previous. They got 20-something% or whatever.
Yeah, they came out top, basically, almost on top,
And-
one seat away from the two main establishment
And to be fair, the way that those seats are divided up is much different than how seats are divided up in Germany, but nonetheless, they did well there. The momentum of Fridays for Future and Greta and all these other, Extinction Rebellion have been, funneling into just people being damn, Germany has a green party, which they didn't even have the best green platform. Die Linke had a better green platform than they did. And they're coasting. They're coasting into the fact that if they end up into making the right coalition, if they end up making the right coalition pact with the CDU for their future, they will become kind of like a neoliberal staple party, which they already kind of are, depending on where you look. But they're, at least the way that I see it, they're teetering between complete collapse or becoming then this next arbiter of green capitalism in Germany.
So they're a vibe for now, but they strive to be a whole ass mood.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Thank you, Alex. Thank you. Yes.
And they
Just trying to put this in terms we can all understand.
And so, in the U.S. and some other countries, when we vote green, it's one of the reasons is anti-imperialism, because both major parties in the U.S. are basically the same on foreign policy, and that's kind of an anti-war vote. In Germany, however, the Greens have a history of being in the government, and there's a lot to say about this guy. But there was I believe, a minister in the 90s who, from the coalition, they let a Green become some minister, and Joschka Fischer, and he ended up being a hardcore military interventionist. So it was basically like the Elizabeth Warren plan to green the military. He was like sending in
solar tanks.
Yeah, he was sending in solar powered tanks. They were shooting like sunflower seeds at people. Briefly,
Anders, do you know which mission he sent us into? Which rip-roaringly successful foreign intervention he sent Germany into?
Was it Afghanistan?
It was Afghanistan.
Oh boy,
which has been nothing but net for the German people.
So it is pretty funny because you can look at old photos from the 80s of the Greens with like, West Germany out of NATO, like very clearly across the banner. They were indeed in the government, which sent Germany into Afghanistan. And I would say even today, like the Greens have, I mean, we're comparing to the Democrats. They do have plans to like spend more than some of the other parties, but they're also, I would say, significantly more hawkish than even the SPD, the center left party, for example.
Right. The
like
thing
tough
is,
talk.
when Americans vote green, it's not an anti-imperialist vote because of anything they said. It's because in our system, it's the same as throwing your shit in the trash.
Right.
So like it's an active fuck you to the only two parties that could possibly win. Whereas if they were actually in power, I'm sure they'd do lots of things I don't want them to do, but it's just not going to happen.
Yeah, and that's if the squad were all Green Party members, they'd still be voting. Some of them would be voting for Iron Dome. It's you got to look at the balance of class sources, but
not like now.
Right. No, that's what I'm saying. Is it doesn't really matter in America anyway what the party is. It's got to look at the balance.
At
a certain extent, that's what happens in Germany too. Like the Greens became this because they got a whiff of actually being in power,
right?
Like Rob, I think, has mentioned before on the podcast that really they agreed to going in Afghanistan because, like, well, we're a grown-up party and this is what grown-ups do. Like, as if it was, like, paying for a mortgage bill or something.
I actually to roll up your sleeves and run over a villager.
Yeah, I mean, like, I
plant a sunflower
think
after you're done.
Germany was, like, the second largest commitment of troops, I think.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, to the whole mission.
They didn't go to, they didn't go to Iraq, though. That was that.
We didn't go to Iraq, so that was the real moral high ground there.
Yeah.
We just went to
saved
Iraq
a lot of money.
They made a lot of money too. Yeah.
Made so much money.
Where else are you gonna get?
What do you think German engineering refers to? It's bombs and tanks and shit.
Yeah, I thought it was mostly VWs and shit.
Yeah, they sent Volkswagen bugs to Iraq.
Volkswagen make other stuff.
This is quickly becoming for me. Which commercials did you get that I also saw?
Did you guys send blimps to Afghanistan? That would have been cool.
A Hindenburg every day. R911.
So these are all the wonderful parties, and we just finished the election. They're coalition building now. What were the hot topics? What were people talking about? Was it like our election where everybody just stands up and declares what they would do to China if they were alone in a room with them? Oh, okay. Well, I have a lot to say about the China thing because America's really trying to push this whole China is the new enemy, and like a lot of Europe is just like, nah, they're rich and we're gonna trade with them. Fuck you. Russia is still the enemy. We're fine with Russia being the enemy, but China, we're not buying it.
The Russia one's even funnier too because Merkel and Heiko Maas, her current foreign minister, met with
such a funny name. I'm sorry.
I know.
Heiko is an underrated.
Heiko is an underrated German name, and Heiko Maas is our drippiest man in Merkel's cabinet.
We have simply no time to explain how much fucking
there's no time. Just
drip.
But
Heiko Maas.
So Heiko Maas and Merkel met with Biden and John Kerry, I believe it was, and so one of the big issues in Germany, which actually became a big election issue, like randomly in the middle of it, was like not just Russian relations, but specifically the Nord Stream 2 pipeline.
Yeah.
And it's one of the things that then like Germany kind of doesn't care about Russia a lot of the times, especially Merkel, because like she speaks fluent Russian. She like grew up in the East. There is like less of, I think, of a fear of Russia from at least her wing of the party. And Germany has like a massive agreement with Russia to build the Nord Stream 2 pipeline. The Nord Stream 1 pipeline's already been built for 10 years. Yeah. It creates a lot of jobs.
It's a gas pipeline for anyone who doesn't know.
It creates a lot of jobs.
It's an exciting new field, gas pipelines.
But like it's so weird because like Merkel literally like has benefited entirely because it goes through her constituency in Mecklenburg-Vorpommern, which is a state up to the north of Germany. And it's an issue that when they met, when the US when US leaders and German leaders met, they made like an exception for Merkel on Russia of like, well, you can like, still not like them, but you can also then take their money and do business with them for Nord Stream.
Sure.
So Germany's relations are bizarre. The China thing, no one cares about. And the Russia thing, people like trying to fearmonger. But at the end of the day, like, I mean, Nord Stream 2 is only unpopular amongst like fucking nerds who like want to make it a thing.
There's also like a huge population of Russian Germans who are just ethnically German people from Russia who just now have German passports who live here. They're like fine or whatever. They all have tiny dogs. Then there's, but then also similarly, you have like Merkel, you have like half the country that did Russian in school because they came from the East. So they just kind of, there's still this kind of Cold War politics of like, let's just keep the peace with Russia and the West. So let's be a facilitator of those two things.
Yeah. And the Greens actually became one of the most hawkish parties in that regard.
Yeah, because they can justify it being like it's a gas pipeline, but like everyone else is like, it's a gas pipeline that one keeps the lights on and stops the Slavs from bombing us.
It's interesting you frame it as a new Cold War politics. How much does the Cold War affect German politics in your estimation?
100% all the time. You can't ever remove it. The number one tourist destination in this fucking city is seeing where the checkpoint was. They fucking love it.
That sucks.
I guess like we talked about like people were doing the Red Scare in the campaign, and that's because you can.
You got two girls from Brooklyn who just did.
Yeah. But like you had this campaign of like, oh, you can't work with Die Linke because there is like a through line that connects them to the party that ruled East Germany. Right. And therefore that's as bad as voting for the Nazis, but like that just is this wider narrative. There's a wider narrative that's been constructed in West German history to kind of like apologize for the Nazis who were still in government in West Germany predominantly. So like that's a huge thing. Also, like even the Greens being anti-nuclear kind of has like its origins of like, oh, Germany should have nuclear power. And then like a lot of activists were like, no, some of you are still Nazis and we wouldn't like you to have nuclear capabilities. Thank you very much. But like it's morphed into a weirder thing today. Big issues though, the actual big issues of this election.
Environmental is probably the biggest.
Yeah.
Like amongst polling was that
environment for certain parts of the country.
Now that we've established all of your money is coming from gas pipelines, how important is the environment to you?
And keep in mind, you can't get rid of this pipeline or else the Russians will bomb us. No, I guess, yeah, people are considered by environment. I think second was social security. And
things that should get you to vote for the parties that you didn't vote for. But
yeah, probably. Yeah.
And the thing that was that then because things like defense and China and all this were made such a like thing in the media, like I said, German media is very conservative. The polling had it like around like 2%, I think, was like defense.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to make that kind of like. Yep. Foreign policy has been out of public control for so long that you're like, why are we even asking at this point?
Well, but even to go back to the NATO thing, it's like we've talked about on our show that like opinion polls, most people are like, yeah, why would we be in NATO? But like in terms of the like the respectable expert opinion, that's like a red line. Mm-hmm. And so the critique of Die Linke NATO, which was again, this was just like a blip where the polls showed that Red Green would have 50%. Completely open question whether the Greens and Späti would even want to have done that. But even then, Die Linke was like, that's just one of our policies. Like, if we can get some social spending in, we will join your government. Like, please let us.
They were like, yeah, we're willing to cave on this position. 100%.
And it's not so. And so it's not really something. It's not something important. Like, it's not the issue people care about. It's being instrumentalized as Die Linke is fundamentally an irresponsible party because they're communist, because they're crazy, because whatever. And NATO is just an example of that red line. So it's almost like you always have to keep that in mind when we're talking about the what issues people vote on, because so much of it is just there's almost respectability politics of like, okay, well, who's competent and in charge, which is why so much of the talk of the Greens is, oh, I like them, but I don't know if they're really ready to run this country.
They haven't read enough books yet.
They don't have enough doctorate degrees.
Fake doctorate.
No, we should say that the number one scandal amongst every politician in Germany is that they all fake their PhDs. Like for some reason, you need a PhD to be in German. Like it's like being a lawyer, but then they just fake it. And then
Right.
it comes out and people are like, oh yeah, they lied. On the
A
CD.
bunch of
Okay.
signs have to get taken down because they really do love putting like doctor whatever their name is like on the campaign poster, and then it will come out that like, yeah, you did a bunch of plagiarism, we're rescinding your PhD, and then it's just like,
Ripping
I mean,
their
it's like a
sexy
requirement.
Christian Linder poster off the wall and rage.
does he have a doctorate?
No, he doesn't.
No, he's
He's
No.
bought it by the street.
no, he's young, dumb, and full of cum. He's
Oh my
he's,
God.
Yeah. The thing I think
Perfect
that's
man.
also the thing I think that's also funny too is that because we're coming out of Corona as well, and the idea then of like red green was also like this economic carelessness that was like looming. And the funniest thing is like a bunch of economic institutions in Germany did like which parties would generate the most in like tax revenue, and which country which coalitions would be best for the economy.
yeah, and it was
And
red,
it
red,
was
green.
in both cases red green.
Yeah, 100%. Because the rest of the party is like, I think one thing that we've explained before, I think when we were on Trash Future, is like the highest tax bracket in this country is 48,000 euro. So like some teachers are being taxed at the same rate as like the richest people in this country. We do have a progressive tax system. It's just that the top bracket is incredibly low.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and it seems like the Die Linke platform was probably the best for the most people in Germany, if that's fair to say. But they were not able to connect with like ostensibly their base, which is the working class. And some of that I've seen accredited to they like kind of fetishized the youth vote, because they have a lot of focus on parliament and a lot of focus on movements like street movements and stuff like that, but they don't really have as much of a presence anymore within the working class in Germany. Is that something that they're going to reflect on and hopefully change going forward, or is it just gonna?
We should kind of just briefly say where they originally came from, because they did have this base of like what's usually referred to as Nostalgie, people who are nostalgic for the East. And that's where you get like your kind of working class and these like incredibly privatized areas in the East. And that was helpful because a lot of other parties, especially before AFD, were saying like, no, reunification was great. Don't mind that like every business that was here is now gone or sold to some guy in the West. It's fine. We just need to keep going. Die Linke was effectively the only party that was saying, no, this is actually shit.
The AFD was also doing it.
AFD is doing that now, but they came a little bit later.
But
now they've successfully moved into like an academic urban kind of category, as well as like young people, some precariat like gig workers, nurses unions has been the biggest success, but still very like an urban workforce. But they haven't done well with like manufacturing bases that are not rural, but in what you would call maybe like dwarfs, like smaller towns or cities.
Yeah, like villages that surround larger cities. And whatnot.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I think, I mean, just to to kind of back up, I would argue that Die Linke was never a working class party.
Sure.
Yeah.
They come out of the SED, which is, you can make the assessment that you want out of that. Sure, I don't care. But the real
That's
working
East
class
German
party, the East German, the social unity party. Socialist Unity Party, sorry. And I would argue that the working class party of Germany obviously is the SPD, and they've been like they had their worst result actually last election, and came back, and with then the sense of someone like Olaf Scholz as their candidate, chancellor candidate, who weirdly is liked by a lot of people. I find him horribly uncharismatic, but I also didn't find him horribly like
everyone
dumb.
else is worse.
Everyone else is worse. That is true. But the SPD definitely has just the history of the unions, like the massive German unions back the SPD like nobody's business, and Die Linke has a very hard time breaking into this structure. The party that then's been actually quite successful with it has been the AFD.
Yeah, I think like when I said like they had these people in East Germany who were probably predominantly working class, that identity was built around East German rage. It actually wasn't built around working class as such. And now they've also kind of lost a lot of them to the AFD.
Yeah, so their turn to like activism politics makes perfect sense. And to be very fair, like I don't want to be too mean to Die Linke, but like some people who we know don't really like who are also on the political left, probably will vote for the left as well if they can vote in Germany or not, but are also very much not appreciative of the fact of Die Linke coming out and just like kind of pretending that they do the legwork when they don't. So they have a lot to work on. This isn't to say that they're a bad party. I think that they're the only party in Germany worth voting for. But when people are like, they went woke, it's like, well, they had no other fucking option, you know?
Yeah. To clarify what Nick's saying, there was a bit of a debate in the past couple of years within Die Linke, basically, stop me if this rings any bells, but basically about like identity politics. And I think we all agree that tends to be beside the issue when there are these structural problems from the founding of the party. And like, this is the terrain of German electoral politics right now. Being like more or less woke isn't really going to push the needle that much.
Are there a lot of clashes with the post Die Linke? I mean, it's half a joke, but also half a question.
Alex, we could have like hour-long conversations about a tendency here referred to as anti-Deutsch. That's like a whole.
That's a whole other episode.
We simply have no time, but we could at one point, because that's a terrifying segment of the quote unquote left that people in this country have to deal with or are a part of sometimes, because they're the only game in town in some places. But in terms of the left,
to sort of put a button on the federal situation, looks like the SPD. God damn it.
Stone Temple Pilots.
Scott Wayland is going to be resurrected and made chancellor. They will be in the government. Who do you think the most likely coalition partners will be?
The SPD is not guaranteed.
Oh really?
No. It's actually in a weird way, it's the other way around. So Kieran can speak to this too, where there's two elements that make all of this more complicated. Nick mentioned one, which is that the head of the party does not have to be the chancellor candidate. So in theory, they could still swap out someone else and make them a new chancellor, like in some agreement.
We could, we could get freaky.
Is that the president of Germany, most presidential positions in European parliaments don't have a lot of power, but he is supposed to basically steer the coalition forming. And in Germany, it is not guaranteed that the top vote getter gets first crack at forming a coalition.
Okay.
And so
that was a little caveat brought in by, again, you guys, to make sure if no one in Europe voted wrong, like Italy did in the 40s or something.
So it's in a weird situation where still all the parties basically have ruled out working with the far right party. Most of the parties on the center to the right have ruled out working with Die Linke, which leaves 4 parties left. And so either it's going to be you have the libertarians we're joking about, and the Greens, who are like basically got together and are like, okay, which one are we going to pick? We're going to pick the CDU Merkel party, or we're going to pick the SPD.
Okay.
Yeah. And so it's almost like the tables are turned.
Yeah.
And it's like, what can you offer us?
Right.
Yeah.
And of course, we mentioned before, Lindner is going to be pushing for economics, or the finance ministry, and so there is a bit of a delicate dance between all of that to see who is going to cave in, who's going to. I mean, I would say in general, I don't know if you guys agree, like Greens probably prefer SPD for all the critique we heap on them, and the FDP prefers CDU.
The Greens are split internally on this, which is really weird because like one of the head party leaders, what's his first name? His last name is Hofreiter. He has like a skullet and looks like how you'd imagine a green person would look like. He mentioned at the beginning of coalition talks that the Greens will be going for the traffic light coalition. And then Robert Habeck, who is one of the co-leaders of the Greens, who was possibly going to be the chancellor candidate, was Annalena Baerbock, who was their chancellor candidate, was chosen over him. Possibly because to be seen as like a fresh face, she's young, having a woman chancellor again would be, something impressive for Germany. She's being reeled back in, and Habeck, who is much more, physically conservative than the rest of his party, is kind of like leaving it up in the air we're the one making me and Baerbock are the one making the decision, for the party. We're the one in the talks. We're going to kind of be the ones who are being steering this. And I think that he is also very easily manipulated by Christian Lindner. There's like been a joke on that's been kind of going through German Twitter that then like Lindner like opens his mouth and that
the green guy basically
Habeck will agree to anything.
Yeah.
So I think
can you blame him? Just look at him.
It is so like, and this is the thing. I guess it comes back to it being a vibe. Is that there's no politics. Like the Greens can do whatever they want, and I think that we're going to end up seeing Linda getting the coalition that he wants, as much as I don't want to see that. And we're going to end up probably seeing someone like Armin Laschet, who is an absolute buffoon of a man who I could talk about for hours because I love him and his family, end up becoming German chancellor, to the point that then, like, that I think 68% of all Germany wanted him removed entirely from politics.
Yeah.
After the election. So, like,
a goofy man.
Why did they want him removed from politics? What did he do?
Jettisoned into space.
He is just, I just look up a picture of him. He looks like the Keebler elf. If you just like,
I said once that he looks like a Care Bear that became a landlord. There's been a couple of gaffes. There was a bunch of like climate change floods in the west of Germany, and then while that was happening, he was like
climate change flood.
pretty much. And
now, so you got to avoid those climate change floods. Those will fuck you up.
I'll get you.
Care Bear landlord has like an eviction notice on his stomach.
Might as well.
Yeah.
And
in this region of the world, it's much better to have the floods where a boy is supposed to keep his finger in a dike, and if he takes it out, the whole town goes under.
Yeah, we love that boy.
Yeah.
Hans, he's such a good boy.
So
give it up to the boy.
We give him a chocolate bar so often.
That shit within like the last year alone was responsible for like 4 massive corruption scandals. One of them being the fact that a meat plant in a district of Nordrhein-Westphalia, which is his state, that he is the governor of, or I guess technically the minister president, but just think of it as governor. It's a little bit easier.
Yeah.
He made a deal with the head of the largest meat facility, that they didn't have to go by Corona regulations.
Didn't have to wear masks, and naturally resulted in massive outbreaks in the like ground zero state for Corona in Germany, basically.
Right. Yeah, so there's that. There was mass scandals that he helped his Instagram influencer son secure a contract with a clothing company, so that then this clothing company would get the masks made. This mask also then was the only mask that was not that from this company, but the type of mask that the CDU passed, the FFP2 mask or the N94 mask, whatever it's called in the rest of the world, was the only mask that you were allowed to like legally use in Germany, and still in most places in Germany. It ended up being that the CDU was making a shit ton of money off of that deal. Armin Laschet then also as well got criticized heavily for, as Kieran said, the flood stuff.
Yeah, he was caught laughing on camera while like someone was delivering a somber speech about like how these entire villages got destroyed. So that was kind of like, I think that's the point in which everyone was like, let's consider some of these other candidates. Yeah. I think was the thing.
Yeah, that was a gaffe.
That was a bit of a goof.
That was
for sure.
That was an oopsie.
That was an oopsie.
Yeah,
you don't need somebody with such a Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy sense of humor about these terrible events.
Kept handing towels, everyone.
Can I just say it rocks that you can trace the not wearing a mask scandal in your country down to one company with a guy behind it, whereas a third of our country is just an open revolt about doing it and is going to die to prove their point.
We have those.
We have those too. Yeah.
But you can also trace the entire outbreak of Corona in Europe to like a handful of ski resorts in Austria that didn't close when the government told them to. And one of the guys who ran that has a successful quote unquote business of selling canned prosecco called Rich Secco that was once sponsored by Paris Hilton and has been sued by the government of Italy for ruining the good name of prosecco. Like this is the continent we like. Okay, so I think a big part of our podcast, for anyone who doesn't listen before, is shattering the illusion that like Europe is erudite and has things all together and like, you know, is running smoothly or efficiently, rather than like, yeah, the guy running for the default party of Germany, his Instagram influencer son made him do corruption for him so he could get better Instagram likes. Like,
to be fair, I do follow him now.
He's a good follow. It's a good account. Joe Laschet.
Nobody has any problem with the Instagram account.
Yeah, it's how you got the Instagram account.
I was bored one day and called him out on it, and he's like, "Bro, do your research."
Oh, Germans love replying. Germans love replying when they don't have to.
He didn't deny it too, which was just the even more telling thing.
Oh yeah, you accuse him of the stuff, and he responds with "Do your research." It's like, you could have said no.
Why don't you get a doctorate in telling me I'm lying?
Yeah.
So it looks like it's kind of a question mark right now as to what the government will be, but not a lot of hope there for something we would like.
Yeah, we could also just end up with the backwards version of the current coalition
Right.
too. If the Greens and the FDP piss everyone off enough, you could just see then the SPD leading the current what's called the Grand Coalition of the CDU and the SPD. It would just be that the SPD would top for 4 years.
Yeah.
And then the CDU would like probably benefit the most out of that.
Yeah, because
With
they'd
an
probably
even
come back
smaller
stronger.
majority, right?
Yeah.
If they did GroKo again,
But some positive news, looked like positive news anyway, coming out of Berlin is a vote to expropriate corporate housing that was, I believe, once public, retaking it
Most of
back.
Yeah.
Something like that.
The most hated city in Germany is taking the power back.
You can
Which
see
is
we
great.
do give them a lot of fuel. All the people who think that we're all communists. It's probably because we are.
Right. Well, yes, and the vote was, I think, pretty significant majority voted for it. But the more I'm reading about it, it seems like it is not at all. This is an advisory vote. So this depends on the government actually doing it, which may not be a sure thing.
So a little bit.
Oh, is that a fake story?
So a little bit of context is that all referendums in Germany, one, you can't have a national referendum in Germany. They can only be held at state or local levels, which is weird in my opinion. And two, all referendums are non-binding, effectively.
I think there are some binding referendums.
Referenda, excuse me.
Referenda,
there you
please. And as far as I understand in the campaign, I'm quickly going beyond my understanding of German law. So bear with me, which is that basically, in order to do a binding referendum, you have to prove that it's a completely legal law, and there's so much bullshit with does it comply with EU law and federal law and city law that as I understand it, they did attempt to pursue a binding referendum, but that the lawyers for the campaign were like, "This is we can't do that. They're going to shut it down so quickly." I remember the intricacies of EU law being pointed to specifically, so there's that. But yeah, they were basically forced to do this non-binding referendum, which is in a strange legal area because legally you can still say it's the will of the Berlin people to do this. So you do have to
can't
do
say that one.
Don't say that one.
It is a weird in between thing where it's okay, what does all this legal stuff even mean if the Berlin people say direct their government to do this, and then it's all right, but then what if they don't? There's not a mechanism. So I guess it would be technically in some sense illegal if they don't implement it, but without any consequences.
Do you think it will happen?
No, but
I mean,
I will end that
now.
with I'll end that with not a completely negative thing.
Yeah. I think we also have to put the other bit of context in here, which is 2 out of 3 of you guys are in New York. New York has about, if I remember correctly, about 63% of people in New York rent. 85% of people in Berlin rent. It is normal in Germany to rent for life.
Yeah.
If you go into a bank here, the big thing they'll try to sell you on is take out a loan to buy a car, because that's probably the biggest expenditure you're ever going to make. It's really weird. When I moved here, my only friend here was an au pair, a fancy babysitter who worked for rich people, and they were still renting. They just rented a really nice place.
Yeah.
Well, the thing about New York you have to consider is 63% of us rent, but then another 30% are homeless. So
sure. So it's a situation where rent is very political here. It's a different situation. People kind of need rents to stay low forever. Some people kind of look at rents as okay, how's my pension going to fucking work with this? So that's a whole ass thing. The other thing is I moved to Berlin because the rent was cheap by European standards. I'm very happy that by European standards, the rent is cheap, and already the local population is fucking pissed at how fast it's getting more expensive.
Yeah, I think that we have to take a step back though too, and the thing that made it more apparent was that the local government of Berlin passed a rent cap that then was deemed unconstitutional because Germany rewrote their constitution in 2006 specifically for this, saying that then that certain referendums, certain laws like this have to be passed on a national level.
Yeah.
And so it was deemed unconstitutional because the FDP and the CDU were the two parties that triggered this discussion to come up on the local government. Two parties who are not in government, mind you, in local.
Definitely not in Berlin. They're hated in Berlin.
Then had this law that was already passed go to then be, revisited by the Supreme Court of Germany. The Supreme Court of Germany, which is very much influenced by a lot of political and economic thought of the AfD, more so than probably any other party.
You think the U.S. Supreme Court's bad? Imagine if they all wore the red robes from Star Wars and surround the Emperor.
But they, so they deemed it unconstitutional, and then this expropriation matter, or technically they're calling it socialization under the official banner of the Deutsche Wohnen.
Because it doesn't go to the state; it would go to the people.
Yeah. So the socialization manner, which was already in the activism was already existing underneath the rent cap. The law of the rent cap then kind of got more the day that the rent cap was overturned, there was a massive protest where then kind of Deutsche Wohnen and Eignen, the campaign behind this socialization program, kind of took to the streets and really got their campaign kickstarting. And kind of when I said no earlier that it won't be passed, I don't think it'll be implemented in the sense that then obviously that then all 240 or 230 whatever thousand houses will become social property. There's going to end up what there's been happening in Berlin is that the large real estate companies, Deutsche Wohnen, which is just a subsidiary of Deutsche Bank that was made for real estate speculation in the late 90s. They're evil, of course, as we all know. Deutsche Bank's one of the worst banks in the world.
One of the worst
Vonovia
banks.
is a large...
had a big
bank.
blow up around 2008.
Yeah. Also weirdly involved with 9/11.
No longer
we have no time for that.
Huh.
We have no time for that.
And Vonovia, a Swedish firm who actually was trying to buy up Deutsche Wohnen in this very weird fear of the, I literally think it was just to change the name of the company.
Yeah,
then make the campaign not work. But then they were just we'll just call it Vonovia and Co. and Eignen or Vonovia and Co.
I mean, the other thing is there are effectively 6 landlords in the city, which is also different from New York and London. This expropriation thing was going to take apartments from companies that had 3,000 or more apartments. 3,000 apartments under one company or person is the most that there is in London of a single entity. Here it's 5 companies.
So what Vonovia and Deutsche Wohnen have been doing though for the past years that they've been slowly selling apartments at market value, mind you, which the socialization thing says that they can ask for less than market value, but they've been selling them at market value to the state to turn them into social housing. What they're going to do with that, I have absolutely no clue. But the Deutsche Wohnen and Vonovia are trying to find a way kind of around this by being we can work this out and just sell you a bunch of things. I think that though, because of the mayor of Berlin, Franziska Giffey, who is from the SPD, but she's vehemently against this campaign. Her own party is weirdly for it in a lot of local regards. There's going to be enough pressure, I think, from within her party. Her party's already wanted to reform the Red Green coalition on the local level. The Greens also want to do it. The Greens didn't campaign explicitly for it, but at the end they were hey, yeah, we're for it. There was even a massive surge in the Greens candidate for mayor at the last minute because the Greens wanted to do this. And at the end of the day, what was it? 56% of confirmed votes.
Yep.
Went to the socialization campaign, and 59.1% of all votes in general that then, the 4% that were thrown out. It's overwhelming. It's more popular than any of the political parties, multiple
more
parties
popular
combined.
than any other past referendum held in the city or even the country, I think. There are politicians within parties that are likely to be in charge of Berlin state that are very for this, holding rallies and stuff about this.
So it'll be passed in some form. It won't be the exact form that we're going to see, but there has to be something done about Berlin's housing because it is
it's the fastest rising rent in Europe.
Yeah. And the people who moved here ourselves, I mean, I moved here 9 years ago or so.
Yeah.
And one of the biggest appeals of Berlin is that it was affordable. And now, like, even, I mean, not just for people who moved here, but people who've been living here forever. To put it into perspective, like, there are people who grew up in the GDR here who were paying like 30 euros or what would be the equivalent of 30 euros of rent, 30 euros a month for rent.
Yeah.
And now that they're paying, the GDR had, like, I think it was
1% of your wages.
1%?
I think it was 1 or 11. I can't remember.
I think it was like, I don't know. It doesn't matter. It was a very insignificant amount of your income went to your wages. It was required by law in East Germany.
Half the city used to be communist, and they want to return to that.
So you're having people that then who have seen their rents during then the period of time of reunification skyrocket from, rates of some people spending 300 euros for an apartment, now double, sometimes even tripling. If they were to get out of their contract, depending on some of the neighborhoods that they live in, it would like quadruple. There's an example of apartments in what's considered to be like, one part the cool hip area, the newly gentrified area, this and that, that's in a traditionally, Turkish neighborhood, that the rents are going for, how big's like 60 square meters?
Oh, I don't know.
It doesn't matter. Okay. 60 square meter apartment is going for like 2,000 euros a month, which for maybe New York numbers sounds normal, but for Berlin,
nothing. We got 3 of those.
and they will try pull all sorts of dumb shit on you as well. Like, and there's no consequences for overcharging on rent. There are like rules in place that are decent. Like when I first moved into my place, I was being charged 1,200 euro a month, and I just basically looked into it, and they're like, yeah, actually legally that's meant to be 900. Whoopsie daisy. No consequences. Here you go. Which is great, but like people are like, you need a consequence, or they're just going to keep trying to like dupe people. Like,
someone needs to form a coalition with the rent is too damn high party, which is the thing that we
had a couple of those.
there was actually a renter party.
I wonder if the same
Jimmy
guy.
McMillan. Yeah.
Well,
it sounds like, I mean, New York, they did pass quite strong rent control laws at the state level, which is good, but it seems like it's almost easier to have a situation for like the renter movement where the property is controlled by a few companies. It's like so consolidated in a way that it makes it easier to sort of expropriate, or at least talk about expropriation. Whereas in New York, there's hundreds, if not thousands, of small property companies and mom and pop landlords, which are actually a huge obstacle.
Some of the most important people we have.
Right. I mean, they're holding up all the progress. Boys. They're like,
my landlord has enough money that he tried to buy Air Berlin, and he tried to run for mayor of Berlin.
He did, I
right.
remember that. That was so funny.
And that's it. It's a different situation in that sense, where like even doing stuff that would help landlords, they're opposed to, because it's really about power and the ability to kick out somebody who's like living under you. Like they want that authority. But yeah, it sounds like something has got to happen.
There is a bit of whatever happens. Like, I think most people in the campaign, at least the people running the campaign, no one expected it to be like over now. Like, it's an ongoing. This is kind of one step of the process.
Okay. Yeah.
So it's also, you can't even say. I know action will probably be taken by the next government or the next government of Berlin, but it's also hard to say is it going to happen or not, because like, maybe this thing will keep going and become something else. We have to see.
Anders, you had a question?
Well, yes. So where do I go with this? There's a couple questions I want to. We're running out of time. I have a out of left field question here. So the late Norm Macdonald had a.
Hey.
He had a joke about how we've had 2 world wars on this globe. Both of them have been started by Germany, and some way, somehow, Germany, even after World War II, has come back to being like almost like the major economic power in Europe, if not the world.
Political analyst Norm Macdonald.
Right.
Yeah.
So if there's going to be another World War III, it seems like it's got to come from Germany yet again. What if it does? If that comes true? What are the different factions now in Germany that would make that happen?
All right, this is a fun question. Well, I mean,
World War III is happening. Right. What are the factions in Germany?
What are your odds?
move.
Yeah, I'm going to a Vietnamese restaurant and I'm just keeping my head down, enjoying a pho. Oh Jesus! What am I? Okay, so I think the joke that we made at the live show, or Ted, our friend, made at the live show, was just that they should trigger Article 50 to invade Berlin after they passed the referendum.
Germany's going to invade itself.
Yeah, Germany will invade Berlin. Yeah. God, it's so hard to imagine that now because Germany is just this very kind of economic and diplomatic power.
I got it.
What do you got?
I got it. All right. Okay. We're feeling all right. Germans have a complex of wanting to be Italian. All right?
Oh yeah, there you go.
there are some Germans
they have better
who are
food.
in fact Italian.
They dress better. Warmer.
So I think that it's going to get started this way. You're going to have some Gavrilo Princip guy in Südtirol, which is a part of Italy that does not want to be part of Italy, go buck wild and just murder Mario Draghi. No, sorry, not Mario Draghi. Murder. No. Who's going to be prime minister in our future?
Who's the prime minister in this?
Who's going to be prime minister?
What, Olaf Scholz
the prime minister of Italy.
Currently, it's Mario Draghi.
No, who's going to be in my perverted fascist worldview?
Berlusconi gets back in.
No, it's the guy from Lamborghini.
No, God damn it, the one who's part of the far right party.
Oh, Salvini.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, Salvini. Okay,
Salvini's going to be assassinated. Salvini's going to be assassinated by a Südtirolan a separatist, which is going to trigger a war between Italy and Germany. That's going to just wrap up all of Europe, deciding which cuisine they prefer.
World War I situation.
No.
No, you start with an assassination by an insane ethnic minority. It's a World War I.
It starts that way. Germany then will invade Italy because they want Südtirol, but then they just get a little bit frisky and then just keep going further south.
Take the whole thing.
Italy then gets a bunch of allies somehow with France. I don't know why they it'll just be, the nice climate countries versus the cold places.
See, this is fun because it'll be like America's overseas military versus America's overseas military.
Pretty much.
Yeah, exactly.
Pretty much. Yeah, actually.
And then the US just gonna be like, well, yeah, we don't know.
I agree with Nick. It's going to come down to a dividing line in Europe that I've talked about before, which is hot Catholics versus cold Catholics.
Or the butter and olive oil line.
Yeah, the butter or olive oil line. That's another good one as well. It's like the Poles versus the Italians. The Poles would be like, no, you have to respect Jesus by living a miserable existence and eating raw potatoes. And the Italians were like, no, you respect Jesus by catcalling women and doing nothing in the sun.
Yeah, and then the U.S. is going to, I figured out the U.S. is going to do what they did during the Syrian civil war and just fund both factions.
We get European ISIS.
Yeah, exactly.
That's our go-to move.
Yeah, that's what, and this is what I was going to bring up.
Covering your bet.
Yeah.
It's a gambling term.
Because we probably did that. I want to ask you guys too. There was this dude, Detlev Karstenraheder, who I watched. There's a great.
I had no idea this is where this was going.
There's a great Netflix series about this guy, A Perfect Crime, who was to give a very oversimplistic thumbnail version. World War II happens. Germany gets divided east west. You got socialist and capitalist, and in the late 80s, early 90s, Berlin Wall falls. They go back to they become all capitalist, and the East is not happy about this. And they got this bank, Truehand, that privatizes everything
Truehand,
in the East. Yeah. And they got this dude in charge of it, and people are pissed. It's weird to watch because they have like the SPD and the Greens and just this huge mass of people out there in the East protesting, ready to start a revolution. And then this guy gets shot and killed, who's in charge of the bank, and all of a sudden the movement dies. Do you think that was the United States? Because it was blamed on the Red Army faction, but I don't think so.
I'll let Rob speak in a bit because he's usually a bit more conspiracy brain about these kind of things. But like, for anyone who doesn't know, our website is operationglad.io to kind of hammer home another point of our podcast, which is we are an American colony. We do what you allow us to do, and if we get a little frisky, it's like we find a prime minister inside the boot of a car or something like that. Good stuff like that. A bank blows up.
I was originally planning to talk about that more, but there is simply no time. Yeah. We'll have to do it.
We'll do another follow-up episode about that.
Rob, what do you think about the Truehand guy?
I don't know. But the Truehand
did fucking suck.
They were like talk about like all of privatization, neoliberalization, like concentrated right in one in one group. That's like, all right, well, let's dig into this little Thanksgiving feast we have here in East Germany.
Rob did it. Rob did it.
So I could see it.
KGB sleeper cell. I fucking hear this shit.
Rob is taking too long to answer.
I also just I'm wondering about the by like 91 what the cost benefit analysis, because like, you know, the West German, let's call it capitalism rather than like a reformed, because all throughout Eastern Europe, also in East Germany, there was, you know, it wasn't necessarily like great neoliberal capitalism. That's what we're signing up for. There was ideas of like, you know, independent socialism or like a new kind of socialism, multi-party socialism, whatever. And, you know, whatever.
Originally, they didn't want to reunify. Yeah.
That's also true. So, but by the time he's assassinated, I don't know if that's like, oh no, they're getting that movement's picking up steam. I think the like ball is rolling towards basically being absorbed by this like capitalist German state.
Yeah,
it's very hard not to imagine the CIA in like the year 1990 to 1991, after everything happening in the Second World, just not constantly giving themselves like a big circle jerk, like hand jobs going the whole way around, just be like, we did it, boys, and just popping champagne.
Yeah.
It's very hard to imagine them doing much of anything. I don't know. I kind of keep the fact that they assassinated the guy privatizing the entire country as a good example of just like how fucking pissed off East Germany was about everything that was happening.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it could have been their own doing.
Yeah.
I mean, I think at the like kind of like what Rob was saying, in the sense that like all the ideas then that were put in place from the Treuhand really didn't have much to do with Hohweder being alive or dead.
Yeah, they'll find a new ghoul.
Yeah. Yep. So like, while like Hohweder, I mean, was like pretty like economically on point for a lot of those, you know, things that were going on at that time.
Yeah.
I mean, the dismantling of East German labor unions, the dismantling and selling off of all industry, like that was going to happen regardless. You know,
they just did it in the most wasteful ways. Well, as like just like every small publisher company just had their books thrown out into a big pile onto the street, being like, yeah, we're just not selling any of these books.
Yeah.
Just fuck it.
But given, like, it is fun to think of it as a conspiracy theory, because probably the reality of it is much more mundane, of just that it would have happened regardless.
Oh, it sucks so bad. It sucks so
right.
fucking bad.
Well, I think the theory...
I can't believe Rob killed this guy.
The theory is that, like...
I think a young Christian Lindner killed him, but that's a whole other story.
Well, I think, the theory is that, like, you know, they probably weren't going to reinstate the GDR, but they were going to be a headache dealing with the East German people. And this totally neutered their movement, because all of a sudden they're like, fuck Treuhand, all this shit. And then they have to do a moment of silence for the guy that was just murked, because they don't want to look like they did it.
The thing is, I wouldn't put it past them. Like, they might. And I do think there is like some it's interesting because, like, first of all, Germans love conspiracy theories. Just get that out. And like, there used to be like widely circulated conspiracies, like, you know, about Gladio adjacent things. One of my
they're mostly Jews based.
Yeah,
true.
That's a way of this.
That's the thing. They're lately they've like, people will still believe conspiracy theories, but it's just back to like hollow earth stuff. Like, it's not. It's not.
I mean, like, the Germans
love it's come from.
I mean, like, speaking of Germans love of conspiracy theories, you had a member of the CDU just continuously posting about the Great Reset, who also was the head of the German Secret Service, and not Secret Service. That's what the U.S. has to protect the president. The German domestic security.
Internal intelligence.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Who also helped a bunch of Nazis, and then he's like tweeting out like actual Nazi conspiracy theories during his campaign that he was trying to run in Thuringia, I guess it's called, but in Thuringen. And so they love it. That's normal here,
and that's what a lot of people don't realize in the United States, because we look at Germany and the way we're taught it in school is like, oh yeah, things just went complete. They had their own Great Reset, a left-wing Great Reset, a diversity Great Reset after World War II. Denazification just completely changed everything, and that's not exactly the case. Like
a thing that never really happened.
Right. The swastikas are illegal, but the currents of Nazism are still very much alive, and the infrastructure of it was, sort of kept in place. Like a lot of Nazi officials became government officials and heads of banks.
Basically, every ambassador for West Germany in the 60s was a member of the Nazi Party.
Right.
Yeah.
If you look at the propaganda posters from 1935, Christian Lindner is on most of them.
Oh, speaking of which, actually, this is great because, like, back in the 50s, his party did have a campaign poster that was like, "Please stop denazification. It's gone too far."
Oh my God! Wow.
Don't dig any farther.
Don't. You're so close. Please stop.
No, but just, I mean, to reemphasize something we've brought up again and again, which is just like the West German state post World War II is one of the most, like, if not like what we're most familiar with Gladio, which is like the spectacular killings, like the control, like you do not get to run this. Like this is all being carefully controlled. The final the Allied forces, and I mean there's still like, American military bases in Germany, but the final like handing over of sovereignty from the Allies to the West German government took place in 1968, and it was conditional. It was conditional on the West German government passing emergency acts, which would basically allow the government to, suspend law when necessary. The I think pretty famous deaths of 4 of the Red Army faction in a prison in 1977 at the time was widely considered to be. I mean, the narratives that they committed suicide at the time, that was widely just not believed. And another one that I always think of, just because it's like, especially lately, is it's widely accepted that the most famous student, the leader of the student movement, you could say, in the 60s, a guy named Rudi Dutschke, was a guy just walked up to him on the street and shot him in the head. He survived. But this guy, Josef Bachmann's his name. They're just like, he was just like a crazy anti-communist. I don't know. And then lately it's come out that he had ties to neo-Nazi cells, and then he killed himself in prison.
Havana syndrome. He had a microwave head.
Right.
So, I mean, the quote unquote Nazi ties, like out of nowhere, and then kill yourself in prison is like that's the salt, fat, acid, heat of any good Gladio.
It's the shooting yourself twice in the head suicide thing. Yeah.
Right. Twice in the back of the head. Yeah.
So
if you look at the orbital bone,
I would not put anything past it. Like, because that like even more so than other European countries, West Germany, which has basically become Germany, East Germany basically voted to like abolish itself, is like one of the like is like the crucible of a lot of these things. Like it's like this is like the reconstruction of a post-war European system and society.
Okay, so we're just gonna have to do a whole Gladio episode sometime, because there's like way too much happening here.
We'll link up again for another collab.
Really good. But one last question here, I guess, just closing out. Without going into the whole history behind it, what is kind of the view in Germany of NATO now, and is there any kind of like energy towards questioning any of your status in it?
I think that we actually had an entire episode. Oh, no, wait, was it an entire episode?
It was behind the paywall, so we can kind of iterate the major points here, which
is just a tease.
Germany's like has this weird thing that we kind of glossed on a little bit earlier, that of the professional political class loves NATO. The overall general public does not like NATO. And the closer you live to a military base, the more likely you are to dislike NATO. So it is a thing
like 4-wing helicopters Japan gets that just fall out of the sky.
Probably.
Yeah. I think it's more just like some American is dissing on your fly girl.
Oh shit! They're doing the pretty fly for a white guy chant at him.
That's magic powers here. Yeah,
cities that are close to bases have massive problems of U.S. troops coming and just abusing everything and everyone, and they hate them. I know, right? Yeah,
that doesn't sound like us.
What do you think? What do you think the first thing is told to a bunch of like young Americans about Germany? It's beer, and the drinking age is 16.
Yeah.
They're going to
They
go fucking
buck wild, and they're horrible. And they get away with doing anything because they're not under the jurisdiction of the German police. Typically, they're under military, rules.
Yeah. But in general, it's one of the things that the public is good about. Like, they do surveys and they're like, do you like NATO? Sometimes they'll come back with like plurality, yes, and a lot of don't knows. But then especially you ask the question of like, do you think we should commit German troops if Estonia is invaded by Russia? And overwhelmingly Germans are like, no, that sounds fucking stupid.
Send us more Ohioans.
Yeah.
Germany doesn't give two shits about the 2% spending for the most part of the general public, but the parties pretend they do, even though the parties don't do it, which is kind of the funniest flex Germany does. They're like, we love NATO, and then Trump was the one who got them to possibly think of meeting the 2%, which they never even met to begin with. So Germany does the great thing of we love this thing, but we're not going to fucking actually pay for it. So.
Yeah, girl, you're my greatest. I love you, babe. I'm not paying for dinner.
Send us more of your boys who drink and drive in our cities.
Yeah, pretty much. You can take public transport. They insist on driving.
I feel that that's like a
UAE. That's what the Autobahn means. There's no limit on the BAC, right?
No speed limit, baby. You can't make me take public transport. It's my American culture. I'm going to drive.
Yeah, I do feel that then if any person was to become a pro-drunk driving person, it would be a U.S. troop stationed in Germany.
God, yeah. I love the Norwegians who are pro-drunk driving. They're the best. We have no time.
This course is so important. Well, we're going to have to round it out there for now. Thank you so much for doing this episode with us. Where can our listeners go find your listeners?
Oh, yeah, you can all meet our listeners in a big pile. You can find us at the main website is operationglad.io. We're on Twitter at Corner Späti. We all have our Twitters at Kieran Dold, at Sternberg Poppy, at Leninkraft. Rob is doing one of his famous Rob bits that are inaccessible and only like 4 people get, and he will commit to it for like 4 weeks.
Rob is the greatest poster.
He should be a 10K account. It's unreal. But he's a poster's poster, doing it for the back of the room. And we do 2 episodes a week, 1 bonus, 1 regular. Corner Späti. We cover Europe. I'm looking forward to not talking about Germany for a bit. I want to talk about Swedish pedophile scandals. That one we've been holding on the back burner for a while.
Or Norway. They got some exciting stuff going on. Yeah.
They also have pedophile scandals, yes. Yep. All the Scandinavian countries are at this. Denmark as well. Actually, yeah, no, we have no. Next week.
No one asks what age the girl with the dragon tattoo was.
Get a tattoo.
She's old enough to get a tattoo.
Yeah, the legal age to get a tattoo in Scandinavia is like 12.
You have to get a tattoo in Denmark at 12. You just have to. And where can our listeners find you, lovely gentlemen?
That's a great question. You can find me on Twitter at Anders Lee here. Dursley1 on Instagram, Other Job Redacted Tonight. Check that out on YouTube, portable.tv. And a couple shout outs this week to someone who messaged me from New Jersey, Jersey City, who has a DSA member running for Jersey City Council in Ward B. His name is Joel Brooks. If you're out there, give him a hand, donate, phone bank, etc., even if you're not in Jersey City. And movie of the week.
If you're in Germany and you want to help the Jersey City Council race, you got to call in for this.
Right.
You'd be surprised.
We are pro-voter.
There were the Bernie was by far the biggest. Yeah.
I saw pictures, yeah.
We were all there at one point.
We were in those pictures, yeah.
And great I was looking for Christian Linklater. Didn't find him, unfortunately. But
LinkedIn.
Christian LinkedIn. And my
LinkedIn ass party.
Last thing, where I want to do a movie of the week plug for a German movie about Germany, about the RAF, Red Army faction. If you're interested in finding out more, check out a great film called The Legend of Rita, which is free on Amazon Prime. Ooh. Very good movie. Will show you the ins and outs of what it was like to be a revolutionary in back in the day. Check
Pretty good.
That sounds cool. I'm gonna watch that.
Yeah.
You can find me on Twitter at Patak Test Kitchen. I put all of my fucking things on there. My movie of the week is Venom 2.
Right on.
I forgot about movie of the week.
Haven't seen it yet, but I mean, more Venom? Sign me up. All right, that's it.
All right. My other podcast is Why You Mad? At Feral Jokes and everything. There's I have an announcement coming up, but I can't say what it is yet.
Ooh.
Is it your album again?
No, that one's already announced. I'm announcing it again right now. My album will be out November 5th, my new one. And now let's rebuild the wall between our two podcasts and never commit this horrible experiment again.
Yes, build the wall.
Yeah.
Build the wall, 10 feet, 20 feet, 100 feet tall. Build the wall, 10 feet, 20 feet, 100 feet tall. Since the minute he became a candidate.